Kalalau Malak Yahweh Wa Yahushai Bahashem Raha Kwadash. Double honors to the elders of GMS who rule well, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing this word in all sincerity. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Brakta. Today's lesson, Conscription. And here we have an article from RT.com that says, Zelensky's last roll of the dice. Why is Ukraine making a new forced conscription drive? And the word conscription, as defined by the Britannica Dictionary online, as you can see here, means the practice of ordering people by law to serve in the armed forces. The draft. Now, in the case of Ukraine, a new forced mandatory draft to save what's left of a dying Ukraine is being forced upon the people. A mandatory draft is being enforced due to the Russians annihilating over 500,000 soldiers on the battlefield. The casualties of the Russo-Ukrainian war are extremely high. Here is proof of those numbers according to the EurasianTimes.com, as you can clearly see here, which says, it will be a shock. Ukraine lost 500,000 soldiers in war so far, nearly 30,000 per month, Lutsenko claims. The article further reads, Ukraine lost 500,000 soldiers killed or seriously wounded since the beginning of the Russian special military operation / invasion. Former prosecutor general and ex-head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, Yuri Lutsenko, said on the YouTube channel. This information is not only verified by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, but also by Colonel Douglas Macgregor. With that being said, let's go back to the RT article, which further reads, here's why Kiev's mobilization reform will only delay the inevitable. This comes to you by Sergei Polatev, information analyst and publicist, co-founder and editor of the VAT4 project. Here's why Kiev's mobilization reform will only delay the inevitable. This comes to you by Sergei Polatev, information analyst and publicist, co-founder and editor of the VAT4 project. Further reading says, now listen to this. In the past year, we've seen countless videos showing men in Ukraine being violently grabbed and drafted into the army. Hard men in military uniforms are frequently seen rounding up civilians on the streets to the accompanying tears and screams of women. And that goes into the scripture, the women shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. I'll get to that. But it says, to the accompanying tears and screams of women, often brutally beating the future servicemen right in front of cameras. It seems that the workers of the military enlistment offices, territorial recruitment centers, or TRCs, act indiscriminately. They just catch random people on the street, including fathers of many children and even disabled people. And that's what we call in Spanish, yendo a las malas o a las buenas. Now, if that does not fall under mandatory enlistment, I do not know what is. Military conscription itself is mandatory military enlistment. Let me say that again. Military conscription is mandatory military enlistment. Just look online. But with that being said, let's go right over to 2nd Esdras 16 and 33. 2nd Esdras 16 and 33. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. Right, because the women shall lose their men to the war. They shall all be casualties of war, especially when that destructive nuclear third world war to end all wars takes place. The virgins shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. When we told you that a mandatory draft was coming, many did not believe. And we've been saying this for years, especially the elders of GMS Great Millstone. That mandatory military draft shall also come to America, aka Babylon the Great, modern day Babylon the Great. The time cometh when the least of the flock shall draw them out to war. Those small hats shall draw out the Americans to war. But first shall come the CHIP of Revelation 13 and 16 before that greater war takes place. That shall happen first, and then that greater war. That R to the F to the I and to the D. Micro CHIP, as we also call it, the micro CHIP. Second Esdras 16 and 34. In the war shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine. Right. And now we are currently witnessing small wars taking place, as in the small war of the Israeli state versus Hamas, and witnessing the war of Ukraine against Russia. But make no mistake, as soon as that CHIP of Revelation 13 and 16 is fully implemented, that third world war cometh quickly. In the war shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, especially in that third world war that shall come. On the day of that greater destructive war, no soldier will come home. Many women shall mourn in the wars over their deceased husbands. You're also seeing a lot of women mourning now, especially in Ukraine. If you actually take a look at Ukraine, Ukraine is devastated. All the artillery shells that are falling upon that place. Many women shall mourn in the wars over their deceased husbands, and it's already starting to happen. That's why this article said what it said. It says, as the article said, hard men in military uniforms frequently rounding up civilians on the streets to the accompanying tears and screams of women. That's mourning, because they know what's going to happen to their husbands. They're not coming back. And Internal Affairs claimed already that 500,000 men have perished. In the wars shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, especially in that third world war. On the day of that greater destructive war, no soldier will come back. Many women shall mourn in the wars over their what? Deceased husbands. The time will come when the Lord of hosts shall muster the host of the battle, host meaning armies, in that final showdown of World War III. The War of Armageddon. Since I mentioned the Lord of hosts shall muster the host to the battle, let's go over to that scripture of Isaiah 13:4. Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 4. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. And this goes to show you that the Lord, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, controls everything in existence. Even all these small current wars that are taking place. The Lord himself is a man of war, according to the scripture of Exodus 15:3. He is a man of war. The etymology of the word muster, which is a verb, means to collect, assemble, or bring together in a group or body, especially for what? For military service. And when soldiers muster, they gather together in one place in order to take part in that military battle. The Lord will gather all nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat for the sole purpose of war. Jehoshaphat, meaning Yahweh Shaphat, which means the Most High's judgment or Yahweh's judgment. Yahweh's judgment. The Lord shall plead with them through war. When it comes to Zelensky's last roll of the dice, that's why he has called for a new forced conscription drive, because he's about to be defeated by the Russians. But with that being said, Ka'olam Malak Yahweh, Wa Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak, Wadash, and double honors to the elders of Jim Ruel. Blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing this word in all sincerity. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barakatah.